Today on the podcast, I have someone I've been wanting to get on here for a while now. It's Claudio Storelli, and he is my new business partner for Neat. So this is a fun episode. We talk about how we negotiated against each other or with each other, however you want to look at it, to do a deal to essentially acquire Neat together, or for us to buy in and become his business partner. We talk about how the deal's going since the acquisition as we're looking to grow it. And spoiler, it's actually going kind of well. We talk about how our strengths and weaknesses really complement each other. We got the new site working. The conversion rate is 4%. The average order value went up $30. And more importantly, our acquisition strategies kind of working. We're acquiring new customers at $20 per person. But in addition to that, we talk about our goals, how we get this to be a 7 or 8 figure brand. We get into his background with his brand that he's launched that is well into 7 figures, what he did to hit that milestone. And if he were starting a brand today, what he would do to get to 7 figures or 8 figures really quickly, and how to balance D2C versus going wholesale versus going into Amazon. He even gets tactical on what he's done to create a content machine to output content in a really creative way, but more importantly, grow his social presence from 30,000 followers for his brand to over 150,000 followers. But we also get into his background. This is a guy that grew up in Milan, Italy, came to the US at a young age, played D1 soccer, went down this traditional path in New York, Columbia Law School, working at Bloomberg, making potentially 7 figures a year, and left it all to go down this entrepreneurship journey. But what I found the most interesting was kind of this mental framework he uses when approaching a new business or doing an acquisition or spending 6 figures to buy the intellectual property. And it's actually a framework he took away from his soccer days as a goalie. So this is a really fun one. This is someone that I really value and respect. And I learned a lot, stuff that I didn't know about him. So if you're looking to start a brand today or looking to grow an existing one that you have, I really hope you enjoy this episode with my friend Claudio.
You cannot invent and pioneer if you cannot accept failure.
We wanted people that were insanely great at what they did.
Nobody was making any money at all. Most people thought the internet was going to be a fad.
So I have my now new business partner on the podcast, Claudio. We have never met in person, but we've talked a lot on the phone and virtually. He's a very handsome Italian man, which is why I wanted to seal this deal. But Claudio, glad to force you on here.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
So let's just get right into it. Like, how's it going? How's our partnership going? We now are business partners and have this brand together. They say that like it's easier to get out of a marriage than a business partnership, and you and I are already deep on this. How's it going?
You know, I'm very frankly and honestly, I'm very happy. I think that the key is that you guys are really good at everything marketing related, and we excel at everything that is product and operations related. So you guys are the sexy part. We're like the boring guys, and so it's very very complementary, and it allows us to know that the brand and the products are going to be portrayed in the best possible way, and that we're going to be looking at every single opportunity for optimization in when it comes to marketing, while focusing on what we know how to do, which is designing great product and handling the technology and the logistics, etc.
Yeah, I agree. Like, we are horrible at making products. I know because we tried to make one and it was the most painful experience of my life. You, Tom, Tyler are very impressive at that. We'll even get into like what you did to pull off Neat. But like my big takeaway is being very honest with like where you are strong and also where you are not strong. And so we learned that the hard way. So we're like, okay, if we're gonna do a partnership, let's just focus on like where we're good and stay in our lane. And it worked out that like you guys are amazing at everything we are not. And also, I think there's something to be said for just working with professionals that have kind of like been there, done that. You have like a very impressive D2C brand. Like you've been through a lot, you know things. And so it's like, oh, we need to switch warehouses or we've got to tweak a product. You guys are like done. Whereas if I were doing that from scratch, I'd be at Google, like how to switch warehouses, and it would be very painful. And so I think that's having the professionalism where people just get their job done. That's kind of taught me for this and like future acquisitions is just getting the right people in the right seats. It sounds so obvious, but that's the big takeaway.
Absolutely, I completely agree. In fact, I remember one of the conversations that we were having as we were starting to work with your agency, and you said, "Yeah, we tried to do this kind of portfolio of brands, but we really suck at product." And I was like, "We really suck at marketing. We're good at products." Like, let's talk. You remember? And then we started talking, and I presented to you the various technologies we had, and then we're like, "Hey, let's. What about Neat?" Yeah. And so I agree. It's all about complementary, and the complementarity is certainly skills based, but I think also personality based. The fact that we just get along really well. And I remember you had your, I think it's no assholes policy, and we live by that. So I think knowing that you're gonna have fun with your colleagues is super important.
Yeah, I think no one's a jerk, and I think everyone there's not a lot of like bro culture crushing it. Everyone's just very honest, and we all have young kids, so we're all sleep deprived and we're very disheveled on calls. But I think that's okay. And the other thing we had is like we worked together with your brand Storelli, so we could kind of test what it's like to collaborate. And so I think that was a big one. And also, even in the negotiation, I was nervous because Claudio went to Columbia Law School. He's got all these fancy degrees. And so when you're negotiating with the lawyer, I'm just like, this is not going to go in my favor. But you are like more than transparent, and you would be like, here, talk to them, talk to that. Like, and so I really appreciated that because we haven't done a lot of deals. And so when you get to the nitty gritty, you can be very insecure in what you don't know. So I thought that was also really
Although I would say two things. One of them is you should always be skeptical of the other party, just because it's just healthy. Like generally, you shouldn't take legal advice from the counterparty. At the same time, in my case, because I've been in this business, but in general in business for a couple of decades now, I know that when you're setting up a partnership, if you haven't set up the structure so that everybody's happy as you succeed, you're just punting problems later. So, and I'm like, I'm really transparent as a person, and I would just feel really bad if I knew that like you were gonna get screwed down the road. So I prefer to be very transparent and say, okay, let's get something, and either we find a deal or we don't find a deal. Then live with that on my conscience.
Yeah. And even when I was talking to like my own like legal counsel, they're like, this is really good. Like everything here makes sense. And so I probably asked too many questions, went back and forth too much, which meant our legal fees were way too high. But hey, lesson learned on that one. The other thing for people doing deals is like being in alignment with the end goal, because it's not like, hey, let's do Neat together and we're just going to pull all the cash out and let's go buy some Lambos and some diamond bracelets or whatever. We were very aligned, like, no, reinvest everything back into the business. It's about growth because we have these other businesses that can kind of pay the bills. And those are things that maybe might sound obvious, but if you aren't aligned, man, that can be rough. Because as you and I talk through finances and numbers, we're like, how much more inventory can we buy? How much more can we invest into growth? And that's fun when you're aligned.
I completely agree. And in fact, one thing that I think has worked well is at no point in time in all these months, either me or you has come to each other and be like, by the way, I spent this extra $55 on something. Can I get a refund? We're both like, whatever it's needed on our side or your side, we just take care of it. And we know that's the deal. We're just trying to grow the business. Obviously, if you need to buy a piece of machinery, that's a business expense. But otherwise, we understand that we're two business entities that are just putting in sweat equity and making investments towards a common goal. And so I really appreciate that because I can see it, working really well.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, we'll see these photo shoots. The talent's getting more and more high maintenance. So if their coffee orders get extravagant, I might have to send an invoice.
Yeah,
But
no
yeah.
problem.
So for people that are like, okay, what are these guys talking about? Like, who is this Claudio guy? We will get to the intro of Claudio. But again, he had this brand Neat. that I was working with him on his other brand, and he started to show us this product. And I'm so skeptical. I've worked with so many brands. Like, I actually would like, I get scared by fashion for return rates for a million reasons. He shows me this product, he sends me one, and it freaking works. As someone that used to live in Texas and used to have to wear a suit to work that was, by the way, wool, because that's the only suit that I have. I remember like walking outside in Texas in the summer for 1 minute and just sweating through everything. And like when I tested the Neat shirt, I'm like, wow, this worked. And so I want to talk about something you did to pull off Neat that I've never heard anyone do. Is you weren't like with Tom and Tyler, be like, hey, let's make this product. You found the IP for this and bought it and built a brand with it. And I don't hear a lot of people out there in the secondary IP market buying something and then repurposing it for a consumer brand. Can you talk about the process of how you found this IP? Because as this is going well, in the back of my mind, I'm like, what's some other IP we can get our hands on?
Yep. So it was really a matter of just happenstance and the right connection. One of our board members for Storelli as a company is also on the board of INSEAD Business School. And he was pitched as part of some INSEAD event a new technology for sweat management. And it was really designed on the back of a NSF, which is I think it's National Science Foundation grant to help the military develop better fabrics for soldiers in hot, warm conditions. So it's really meant as a performance fabric. They came to our offices, they pitched us the technologies, and they had several technologies in the portfolio. And I realized that we were just not that interested in the use for a performance use case. But then I looked at the Neat patent, which at the time was called Fresh, and I thought this is something that every guy going to work in a New York City subway in the summer needs. And I thought there's massive potential, and so I kept staying in touch with the CEO of the company, and I offered to commercialize the brand the patent. But at some point, she came to me and said, "We're going bankrupt. I'm selling the IP. It's going to be a competitive bid process." But the process was starting in July, and I knew that none of the big companies would be ready to pull something really fast. So I thought I actually have a shot. I pulled together some funds, made a bid, low six figures, and won it. And we paid for that, and then I was able to raise some money from our current investors and start the brand. Now, where that leads to us partnering is that we spent a year actually turning the patent into a product, because a patent is just a piece of paper that is supposed to describe a process or a mechanism, but doesn't mean that you have a product ready to order. So it took us a year and quite a bit of money to get to the point. And then as we started launching the brand on a relatively small budget, that's when the pandemic hit, right as we were launching it. And if there's something that people don't care about during a pandemic as they're sitting on their couch, is whether they look sweaty. So that just killed the use case and basically put Neat on basically like in the freezer, until later on my investors started saying, okay, are we doing something with this? And I started saying, look, this requires real marketing muscle. I don't think we're good enough, and we spent a lot of the money leading to the pandemic. I gotta find a creative solution. And that's when we met, and you said, I suck at product, but I'm good at marketing and growth. And I said, opposite, let's do it together. And that's where we are.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's so impressive for you to have the cojones to see that the IP is available, take action, and get funds to do it. Because I think a lot of people might be hesitant to do that. But maybe it's the fact you already had trust and investors that would be down to do this just from your network. Like, what was the mindset? Was there any hesitation not to do it?
No, so no, honestly, not, because I tend to. I've learned from playing soccer, actually, as a goalkeeper, that you can completely change the way you experience your reality and affect your level of enjoyment. Um, if you are a goalkeeper, for example, and you see every shot as an opportunity to get scored on, you will be scared by every shot. You will see it as a risk. So you will fear the shot. If instead you see it as an opportunity to do something great, you can't wait for a shot to come. And that's the difference between wanting to play and be excited and be like all scared. And so similarly, I try to approach life towards that is an opportunity to shine. And so the characteristics, the reason why we invested in Neat is because it fulfilled a couple of criteria that are key to the way we look at e-commerce. We don't do fashion. Uh, we don't do vitamins. We do painkillers. And what that means is that we look at products that address a very, very clear physical need, whether it's injuries in soccer, whether it's sports bras, which we'll launch later this year, whether it's sweat. It's something that affects people physically and emotionally. And we need to have a solution that is ideally IP protected and very, very effective, that is also demonstrable in the way in which you market in this digital age. If you have all three factors and the need affects a mass market, then you're onto something that can turn into a huge success. Because I know how to market it, I know the product the product works, and I know it's something that is going to be eye catching because it's a.
That's such a good distinction because it's got to have that moat or that point of differentiation, right? And it's got to solve a real problem rather than be like, oh, here's another cool brand that looks like all the other ones. Because I think it's easy to fall in that line if you don't look at it as a painkiller killer. By the way, great like mindset talk on the goalie analogy. I'm totally going to steal that. Because I have this idea of like play offense in your mind. Because you know how it is when you're a business owner or founder. I don't know about you, but I can go down a doomsday rabbit hole. It's like, oh, we lost a client. Oh, these other clients, like they're not going like we want. And I'm like, oh crap. Everyone's going to fire me. I'm going to have to get a job as like a tree trimmer out here in Seattle. But I try and like catch myself and be like, no, actually, we have all these good things going for us. Let me play offense and how I can make good things go for me. But I don't know if you have to find yourself doing those pump up talks to yourself.
It definitely affects it. But because I played goalkeeping competitively and I was always playing with older people, I found myself dreading the games because I had so much reputation that I built that I was afraid of losing it. And also, I'm going to reinforce stereotypes about Italian men, but I applied it. A lot of people say, "Oh, you have a beautiful wife. How the heck did you get such a beautiful wife?" So I'll explain how this applies to that. When I was single, and I was single for a long period in my life, I will often have to go and talk to women. This is old school, okay? So like you go to bars or you go to places and you actually have to meet them. It's not there's no DMing, there's nothing like that, and that requires you to put yourself out there. Now, this is also true of getting a job or whatever else, right? But I relate to that, and I think it's kind of funny. So if you're in a bar and you see a beautiful woman, or if you like men, a handsome man, and you know that you're going to have to make yourself vulnerable, if you think of it as there's a chance they're going to totally reject me and my ego is going to be hurt, of course you're going to be like very timid. But if you look at it as a chance, oh my gosh, in literally 30 seconds, I may be sitting next to her or him and have a conversation with this beautiful person that may be the love of my life, then you're like, what do I have to lose? And you just stand up and do it. So I try to apply that. Obviously right now it's not in that context anymore, but it applies to many opportunities that come by. I try to look at the upside.
That's awesome. And I think it changes your whole demeanor when you approach a situation like that as opposed to being passive. Very cool. One thing to kind of wrap up Neat, like I'm feeling like I'm on a high right now with Neat. We like have the new photos. The photo shoot went well. The new website's up. We've been able to, small sample size by the way, people, but we've increased the average order value by like $30. We've got ads going. It's at like $20 cost per purchase. I'm like, let's take this puppy to the moon.
Conversion rate is close to 4%, I think. And just to give you a sense, yesterday I was talking to another CEO, and he asked me what I was doing, and I showed him Neat. It was like, this is a really cool website. Like, how did you pull this off, etc. And that's when I made an intro to you. It was because they looked at the Neat site.
I owe you some big kickbacks if we work with them. Thank you. But it's a great, it's like, I'm so fired up for our website. So like, what's the goal here? Like, because what are we doing over the next year? Because one thing that Claudio and I talk about is like, the advantage we have is like we don't have a lot of overhead, so we can reinvest. But we're both a little impatient. We want to grow. We're not trying to like risk like all of our family's assets to pour into it, but we also want to go aggressive. What are your thoughts on like the risk tolerance scale on how we get this thing up the curve to like mid seven figures?
I think that if the growth continues the way that I think we can support, and we get a good return on ad spend, and essentially we are fueling profitable growth because we have no SG&A. So every marginal dollars that after you covered media is essentially profit. Then I think we'll be in a steady place, and on our own we can certainly grow organically, and we can leverage some of the inventory financing options that are out there to start scaling the orders. That by necessity, unless the growth is really really explosive and you hit on some of the notes that like companies like True Classic have been able to do, it's going to be hard to go ballistic. So we're looking at a steady but rather gradual slope, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it so long as we're heading in the right direction. The alternative is we get into seven figures and then we go out and raise money. But raising money has pros and cons, one of being that we essentially hire a boss for ourselves because we'll have to report to someone, and right now we make the decisions and we take risks and we do it with a smile. So I would rather not raise any funds and just do it on our own, but we'll have to evaluate as we enter 2025.
Yeah, and like dilution is very real, and it pushes the goalpost back on what we want to do. But the good thing is these are good growing pains and problems to solve. But I'm a big fan of don't try and be over clever at the expense of doing something stupid. And so I'm like, okay, let's kind of keep going down this track. But I think it'll be fun. We'll have to keep doing check-ins on some of these big strategic moves because this kind of leads to the next thing. The other thing that I like about a partnership, I had a small stint. I was a finance major. I had a small stint in investment banking. I still love nerding out on spreadsheets. And usually that's a skill set I bring to the table. Claudio is better at that than me, and it's a little annoying because of his background. So I want to get into Storelli, but talk to me about Claudio pre D2C entrepreneur and kind of leading up to that because you kind of had a more traditional path.
Yeah, to some extent. So I was born and raised in Italy, and in Milan, and until the age of 16 I lived there. Then my parents asked me whether I wanted to study abroad, and they had sent me out to study abroad for a couple of weeks every summer since the age of 9. So I was used to being away, and I ended up in Dayton, Ohio, where I spent a year.
Just the Milan of North America,
Exactly,
absolutely.
exactly. And but again, like looking at the different way of looking at things, you could assume, okay, well, you're spending a year in the US as an exchange student, you're in Dayton, that's a bad thing. But I ended up in a great family. They were a soccer family. I had a brother that was also applying to college, and even though I was 16, because of a combination of factors, I was started to get looked at by colleges, and I ended up taking the SAT because my peers were, even though I was younger. And for a number of chances, I was able to get into college at the age of 16. So then here I am. I'm a 16-year-old Italian boy who barely speaks English, and I can go play Division One soccer in California, and or go back to Italy and do 2 more years of high school. And I looked at my family and they looked at me and we all started crying. And I said, I have to do this. So I went and I joined my freshman and sophomore year. I went to Santa Clara University, which is in Santa Clara, part of Silicon Valley, right as the Silicon Valley was exploding. Uh, played in a national championship Division One because I just happened to be in one of the best soccer teams in the country, completely randomly, because by the way I was 16 and I set the bench. So but I have a
Hey, you're on the
D1.
team. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I have a D1 trophy at home. It's a second place, but I have a D1 trophy here. And then I do 2 years, and then I'm there and I have perfect grades. I am a D1, like nationally ranked athlete. I'm foreigner, and I think I'm like perfect shoe-in for bigger schools. I'm just like check all the boxes. So I applied to Stanford, and lucky I got in. So all of a sudden, I'm 18 years old and I'm a junior at Stanford. I graduated Stanford by 20, and the internet bubble exploded. So then, what do? I can't get a visa to stay and work. I can't get into a business school. So I think, you know what? I'm kind of a nerd. I've studied philosophy and economics. I go to law school. So that's what brought me to Columbia Law School. I go to New York. I get to law school. I can't even drink legally in law school. In fact, the dean of Columbia Law School gave me drinks at like reception, and I couldn't even drink legally. He doesn't know, but like he was breaking the law
You're like, I'm
because
from Italy. I've been drinking wine since I was 5. This is
exactly,
ridiculous. Yeah.
exactly. So end up doing law school. I graduated 23, and I am realized I don't want to work for a law firm. I passed the bar. I get a job at a big law firm, and I'm like, I got to do something else. So I throw a hail mary. I apply to a consulting firm and get into McKinsey. So I joined McKinsey and Company, but because I was a postgraduate student, they placed me with people that are coming out of business school. But people that come out of business school normally have years of experience and actually have done something in their lives. I had done nothing in my life. I had just played soccer, studied law. I barely knew how to open Word. So I started at McKinsey. I get my butt kicked essentially because it's basically like a training camp. And then from there, I ended up staying 5 years and then moving on to Bloomberg, where I ended up helping run and start a number of businesses. And by the end of my career there, I was maybe 32 or so. Um, I had been given a C-level role, like chief operating officer of a billion-dollar enterprise technology division. So I was like just flying. I mean, I was working directly for one of the founders of the company. Like I was on my way to steady seven-figure salaries. Like life was set, but I just didn't
And
want it.
in like 10 years in New York on Wall Street, that's like 30 years in like business years. It's so intense. That's insane. Yeah.
And I didn't want that lifestyle. I just didn't see it. And maybe I was reckless at the time because when you start making a lot of money and you don't have kids and you have the expenses that you have, you just think whatever, money will always come. I appreciate it a lot more now than I did then. But so then I started out of my basement. I started a company which is Storelli Sports, because I was playing soccer in the city and people were getting hurt, and I thought, why does nobody solve the problem? And as I was doing that, Adidas ended up taking a look at what we were doing, loved what we were doing, and so they flew me out to Germany, and they said, "We'll fund your Series A." Come,
Wow. Wait,
but
how did you get on the radar of Adidas? How did they know about? And for people listening, was your flagship product gloves, or was it the padded
no, actually, the
guards?
flagship at the time was something that didn't actually come to fruition as the thesis as we thought back then, which was a head protection. So side sidebar, concussions are a pretty serious problem in soccer. More and more professional athletes are having long-term damage as they age, and we know that head protection can reduce the risks, but the research out there hasn't quite reached the kind of levels that make the evidence convincing, and there's no institutional interest or incentive to push for additional equipment because nobody gains really, aside from brands like mine. So that never spread, and I don't see it spreading for a few years. The pandemic put a lot of youth soccer on its knees, so if anything, it's made things worse. But so what Adidas told me is great, but you got to leave your job, your cushy job, and go do this full time. So that was 2015, and that's when I left, and that's the last time that I earned a real salary, essentially. And but since then, I've been building a portfolio of brands and companies on the back of that. So that's what brought me to where we are today.
Dude, that's amazing. I didn't know the exchange student component or I knew you were a big soccer player, but that's amazing. We're gonna have to do a whole side podcast on your highlight reel of your greatest moments. But that's a sidebar. Um, so Storelli, I mean, it's insane the traction that brand has gotten with professional soccer players. from goalies using the product. How did you go from getting seed round from Adidas to where you're at today? What are some of those inflection points with growth, whether it's like wholesale or D2C or under like figuring out ads? Like, talk about some of those milestones and growth you've hit.
So I think that the first key step, and it's something that is a continuous evolution, and it's key central to our thesis that I mentioned earlier, is we always excel the product. There is no player. Well, I'm sure there's some people that will give us a 1 star because whatever. I see 1 stars even in the best of products, but in general, we are very well known in the market for having a really good product that looks good, does what it's supposed to do, lasts a long time, and is premium price, but in a fair way. I'll give you an example. You can go to Lululemon and just buy regular leggings that have no special characteristics other than some nice fabric and pay, I don't know, $120. We'll charge $90 for really technical padded leggings for goalkeepers that are meant to withhold impact. It's underpriced, if anything, but we know that the buyer is probably a mom buying for a 12-year-old kid, and so we can't outprice the mom, or we don't want to be the brand only for the rich spoiled kids. So it's a fair price, a bit premium, and really solid product. That was step number one. Then the brand was born in 2010, actually, which is before even Instagram existed. If you think about it, it's crazy. It's now 14 years old. So we started in a more traditional way. And if anything, we weren't the first adopters in the online game, or at least we weren't among the first brands that were like, wow, this is the trend. So we invested a lot in B2B, Dick's Sporting Goods, the retail stores, and that got us to break in 7 figures. And then what is allowed to climb the 7 figures ladder is internationalization, 1, 2, leveraging Amazon as an additional distribution channel, and now, which is phase 3, is really getting the ads done correctly. And that's what we started doing with you on the ads management side, and what we started doing with our social media content and ads team that we built in Italy.
Mm-hmm. That's very cool, because it's always interesting to hear the playbook of going from idea to 6, 7, and 8 figures. But it's like, at the time, really amazing product, figuring out like wholesale retail, and then like layering in Amazon on top of that, layering in D2C. I think that's pretty impressive to kind of
If I
go
was
up that
starting
ladder.
today, going to your podcast title, I will do things. Yep, I will do things differently. In fact, that's what we're doing with Neat, and what I will do with Brilli, the sports bra brand we'll launch. I will skip B2B and I will skip Amazon. Because if you have a really good product and you're good at explaining what the product does in an intuitive way, and then third, you know how to manage the mechanics of running ads on Facebook and Meta and the other channels, you have all the ingredients that you have to go from 0 to 8 figures within a span of 3 to 4 years, I think.
Amazing. So if you're going to say you'd start with the D2C play, when would you think about layering on Amazon or layering on wholesale and retail?
Wholesale depends on the product. For example, a product like Storelli has such a niche, limited set of stores that right now, for us, it brings 7 figures, but it's after a lot of investments. I think I may not even bother. But if you have a product that has, for example, say there's a lot of running stores or general athletic stores. If you have a product that is like a perfect sock that avoids blisters, then you probably can have 400 stores ordering $20,000 a year. That's real money. So I think even to sell into stores, you need to have proof of traction, because the buyers are going to be impressed by the product, but they also want to know that some people will come into the store looking for the product. So I will say you get to 7 figures first, and then you start worrying about B2B as an additional channel. Amazon is a tricky one, because Amazon is either a destination for price comparison from people that already have an intention to buy on your site and just look for a better price or better shipping option, in which case it's not really additive. You could argue it increases conversion because it just makes the user so, and it's hard to obviously know, but I will say that in most cases it's cannibalistic. Because also you got to think, even if your conversion rate is increasing by 10%, you're giving up at the very least 15% in Amazon fees on those sales, so most likely you probably even. um, However, it's if you're in a category where there's a lot of organic traffic, you may be able to get some of the passerbys in some sense. And if over time you get really good organic visibility, you may be getting way more traffic and organic visibility via Amazon than your own website. But it's highly contingent on the product. Um, it needs to be the right time and the right, like if you go in a well-established category where there are products that are already have 10,000 reviews, good luck getting any organic visibility. It's just not going to happen. But if you're in a new category that is about to explode and you're one of the few players, you may go from 0 to 100 on Amazon because of that. So it depends on the nature of the business.
Yeah, that's a good call out. And yeah, great if it's good for new customer acquisition, but tough if it's like, oh, they know about your brand. Let me go to Amazon to see if I can get it faster or cheaper, and then it can be kind of a detriment to the brand.
Especially because then
One,
it messes with all your attribution metrics, and you don't know anymore whether your ads are working or not, because there's no easy way of knowing. I have no way of telling about even the lifetime value of my customers, because they may buy two things here and two things there and they're not tracked together. So it's hard. If you're able to avoid, like we'll probably do for Neat, then you just have such a better look into your universe.
yeah, you get better insights. You can make better decisions. I do wonder, like, I get nervous about the competitive landscape of what we offer with Neat, and then two, like, can we put a flagship product on there to acquire customers, but then hold back inventory so they come to the website? But it's that in itself is tricky.
I mean, you could use Amazon if it's a competitive category. You can invest in Amazon to like steal market share from competitors, but it's expensive proposition.
Yeah, hence the fundraising potentially. But so one thing you're doing really well with Sorelli. So anyone that has a consumer business, eventually you're going to be in a content battle, and it's a battle with yourself and your team. Like, how do we make enough content to feed the beast, whether it's for ads or for organic social? And then, by the way, it's keeping up with new content formats and styles and making it relevant. You've kind of cracked the code with something you've done on content for Storelli, and it's really helped us with ad creative, and it's really helped just build up your organic following. You want to talk or share a little bit about what's working on the Storelli content machine?
Yes. So it was 2020, and the 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 world was just in shambles, and I didn't know if the brand was going to survive. And when we figured out that it was going to survive, by then I had basically half of the marketing team had gone, and we didn't have any resources. And we didn't have TikTok, and we were sitting at about 30,000 followers on Instagram. And we had a very pretty Instagram page because all the posts were curated, but it was not very engaging. At that point, I realized that um, ads and content on platforms like Instagram should not be thought of as like postcards, or be too focused on product, and too, like a selfie where selfie, that's what I used to call it. It's like, it's not a selfie, it's supposed to be entertainment. And if you entertain the user, then the user then starts knowing your products, but it's through that process. You have to provide something of value, otherwise you're just being like vain, oh, look at me, look at me. So at that point, I started looking for influencers that could be good faces of the brand, and I connected with a guy who at the time had 100,000 followers on Instagram, was already over 1 million on TikTok. And I said to him, will you just come work for my brand, exclusively for my brand? I'll let you do other freelance work for other brands so long as it's not in the same space. I'll put you on a retainer, and you're gonna create content on a weekly basis, and you're gonna post it on Instagram, and you're gonna create our YouTube or TikTok and YouTube, and you're gonna create ads for us. And over time, he built his own team, right? So we have a project manager person that helps us with or coordinating the shoots and manages the calendar. Then we have a team of two ongoing product content creators that are basically the faces of the brand, and then we have guest creators that we bring on board. This team then, led by the main content creator, uh, l- works directly with your ad management team, which then helps generate briefs for ads and then also edit some of the ads. And this little ecosystem, which is ultimately like 5 or 6 people, creates all of the content that people see, whether in the form of social media content or ads, and took us from 30,000 to 155,000, I believe, followers on Instagram in the span of what now it's 3 years, and I think 500,000 followers on TikTok, and high performing ads that we use to fuel growth.
It's really a huge unlock, especially because we have someone dedicated to content creation, and the speed of iteration is amazing, to where we can give storyboards or scripts or let them kind of run and give us stuff. But it's creating that machine that for me has been the most inspiring. So with Neat, we're trying to figure that out. So if anyone is a content creator that sweats a lot, hit us up. We could do a similar deal. But no, man, it's been really cool to see how that cooks. So I got two more questions for you, and then I'll let you get on with your yeah, go for it.
One comment on one thing. One issue with the strategy that we have that is addressed in part by the nature of what we do is that if you have one face all over your Instagram all the time, it does end up kind of annoying people a little bit. It's less of a problem for us because what that person does is so physical and so active that what you're really focusing on is not the face of the person, is the fact that the person, you're seeing a body like flying and doing things like all these saves, etc. So it's spectacular in nature. If you're a fashion brand and it's always the same model, at some point you're like, oh, like, you know. So there's a fine balance. For Neat, it's more likely to require a team of creators, which is why it's harder to crack, especially on a budget. Um, but it's something we need to figure out.
Yeah, that's a really good call out on the distinction of something that's an action sport like soccer, as opposed to something that's more kind of essential apparels like Neat. They're very cool. We'll figure it out. We need to do some hunting, but that's a high priority. So two more questions. One, it's pretty impressive what you've done with Storelli. Now you've got Neat going, that I'm obviously like super fired up about. You have Brilly, a really impressive kind of performance sports bra that you're going to be launching. What's kind of the end goal here as you're standing up these different portfolios of companies? Even before the podcast, we're talking about another thing that you're launching. Talk to me about like the next 5 to 10 years. What's the main goal of what you're trying to do with this portfolio model?
I ultimately, I guess I'm already living my dream in the sense that I'm already doing it. I just don't feel that I don't feel successful yet, but I'm already doing what I love doing. I wake up, I'm happy, I want to work. I look at my emails, I look at stuff. I'm excited to see what's new. Um, and so, what I love about the portfolio that we're setting up is that the portfolio that we're setting up uh, supports my lifestyle, so it provides the cash flow that I need to survive. I don't buy Lamborghinis, by the way. So I mean, but you know, live decorously, I guess, and pays the bills, feeds the kids, and at the same time, each one of the companies has equity value. So I'm creating both cash flow and then a call option for upsized potential in the future. My goal is to grow this portfolio and ideally keep the companies as much as possible in terms of into cash cows that can return funds to investors. And when we realize that that's not the best use of the company, because by nature they're going to be profitable, then sell them and just monetize them. And so in 5 years, I'm hoping to be in a point where The portfolio is now in the tens of millions of revenue overall and can be packaged into a very sizable exit, which then can allow me to redeploy capital and buy other businesses and or start new businesses, because that's what I like to do eventually, is kind of run my own PE or holding company with a lot of companies, kind of like what I'm doing now, but on a bigger scale.
No, I love it, man. We're so aligned, and that's kind of what we talked about in the early days. But it's pretty cool to see it as it's like kind of slowly coming to fruition, man. But super excited. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. Again, impatience is not a virtue. The last question I have is, what's the nicest thing anyone's done for you in your professional career?
So if, two examples that come to mind. One of them was when I was before I was starting Storelli Sports. I um, was still at McKinsey, and I was trying to figure out how to even break into this space. And I read that the owners of Soccer.com um, were actually two brothers that had started the company in 1994, and they were entrepreneurs. So I called the support line of Soccer.com and I chatted about some product, and I say, "Yeah, by the way, I heard the brothers are there. Are they still there?" He's like, "Yeah, yeah, they're here. Are they approachable?" "Yeah, yeah, super approachable." Um, can you? I was like, "Is there any chance that I can like be passed through the office?" "Sure." So pass me through the president's office. I leave a voicemail, and I basically say, "I'm an entrepreneur in soccer. I admire what you've done. I'd love to have some mentorship and ask you a few questions. Please call me back if you can." And they actually, one of the brothers, go back to me, full of life, full of personality, and for a period of time, at the very least, and we're still friends. Took me under their wing, invited me over, showed me what they were doing, pulled a couple of funny pranks on me. They're just very funny guys, um, and introduced me to the space and gave me a lot of tips. And I thought, for absolutely nothing in return other than the satisfaction of helping another human being in which they maybe saw themselves, 20 years earlier.
Mhm. That's pretty cool, especially when they have nothing really to gain from it, and you're like, especially that phase, you're so malleable. It's like I don't know what to do here. So very cool, man. Um, yeah,
So they're based in North Carolina, in the same town where Adam and Eve is based, which is the largest sex toy business in the world. And when we took me out to dinner. Then some of the one of maybe the owner of Adam and Eve also joined the dinner, and we all, we talked, blah blah blah. Then eventually I went back to New York City, and I was just starting to date my wife, and a huge brown box arrived in my doorsteps with, from Hillsborough, North Carolina. And I thought naively, "Oh, soccer shoes, balls," and I'm there, and I open it in front of my now wife, and I cannot even name the things that were included in the package, but all kinds of sex toys and weird fetish tapes, and they were like, I know those guys, they were just laughing their butts off. And then all of a sudden I had this like repertoire of sex toys that was, I could have opened a shop. So
oh man, yeah, it's hard to back out of that one when you have your girlfriend there that you're trying to impress. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Oh man, there needs to be some sort of payback for that. That's awesome, man. Um, well, for where should people go if they want to see more of what you're working on, Claudio?
I guess I need to be more active on LinkedIn. You do a great job. I don't really. I'm one of those guys that kind of built in secret and just does it. So it's hard to see, but clearly follow you because you're the best at keeping up to date on Neat. And then otherwise, watch out on my look out on my LinkedIn, because I'll be talking about the sports bra brand that we'll be launching at the end of the year, and I'm very excited. We're collaborating, so it's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's super impressive. Between that and Neat, I think you've got some fun launches going on. But and yeah, and I'm gonna come visit Claudio in Italy. He goes there every year, and he doesn't know it, but I've invited myself to come stay with him. So I can sleep on the couch. But excited for the Neat Italy retreat. So I will be showing up there.
You're more
Cool.
welcome.
And maybe I'll see you in Dallas soon. I got it. Wait, what's that?
Yeah, so you can come anytime. My mom will cook.
That's right. And maybe I'll see you in Dallas soon. I got to keep you posted on that. But Claudio, this was awesome, man. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was really fun.